America's most loved watch brand wears no crown and carries no Geneva seal. YouGov's 2026 ratings place Timex at number 1 in the United States, with Rolex, the most recognizable watch emblem on the planet, at number 2, holding 49% popularity. That is not a rounding error. That is a verdict hidden in plain sight. The promise of this story is simple. 5 watch brands that American millionaires genuinely seek out. And the 5th one will break every assumption you carry about wealth and the wrist. The visible world of luxury, the polished dial, the weight of a case settling into the palm, tells you one story about status. The data tells another, and somewhere between those two stories lives a truth the catalogs never print. Why would a man worth well over $100 billion wear a watch that costs less than a dinner reservation? Why would the most sought-after name in American horology be a quiet workhorse that sells for pocket change? These are the 2 loops we will close together. The first involves the psychology of visible signals. The second is about a single name you have already forgotten. Picture the weight of a steel case in your hand, the glare of a polished bezel under museum light. That is the image the luxury industry spends fortunes to burn into your memory. Yet the evidence sits quietly across the Atlantic in a 2023 report from the South China Morning Post, noting that Bill Gates goes for Casio. The richest documented watch wearer on Earth chooses the brand you stopped noticing in middle school. That dissonance is not an accident. It is the door. The visible world of luxury is a masterpiece of staging. Row after row of crowns, each one a tiny signature of authority. Guilloche, that engine-turned engraving that catches light like woven silk, dancing beneath sapphire crystals. The sunburst dial that shifts from silver to gray as you tilt the wrist. We are taught to read these objects as a language of wealth, and the language is deliberately loud. Rolex and Cartier anchor that language. The South China Morning Post's 2023 report frames both as the brands favored by Silicon Valley CEOs, the quiet currency of boardrooms where a single decision can move markets. YouGov's 2026 ratings confirm the resonance. Cartier watches sit at number 6 in American popularity with 41% approval. These are not obscure names. They are the architecture of visible success. Yet, here is the first crack in the facade. YouGov measures the American public, not the investment portfolios of the elite. And the American public, asked in 2026 which watch brands they actually admire, ranked Timex above Rolex. Number 1 versus number 2. The workhorse beats the crown. The quartz beater that your grandfather wore to mow the lawn outranks the King of Geneva in the court of public affection. The visible tells you status. The invisible tells you something the status game cannot survive hearing. What the dial does not show is the contradiction at the heart of the entire industry. We assume millionaires stockpile only ultra-expensive Swiss steel, pieces that cost more than compact cars and require waiting lists measured in years. The South China Morning Post's 2023 report dismantles that assumption with a single sentence. Bill Gates goes for Casio, not a limited edition, not a skeleton tourbillon with a hand-engraved balance cock. A Casio. YouGov's 2026 ratings make the surprise even sharper. Casio holds the number 4 spot in American popularity, commanding 43% approval. The brand your wrist forgot ranks among the most loved in the nation, and the world's most documented billionaire wears it without apology. The myth that all millionaires prefer only ultra-expensive Swiss watches collapses the moment you look at the actual data. If you have ever caught yourself glancing at someone's wrist before checking the time, you already know the dial is not the whole story. We all do it. We scan for the logo, measure the presence, file the verdict. That is precisely what the visible world wants. A quick judgment rendered without depth, delivered in a single glance. The status signal works because we agree to read it without asking what it conceals. Close your eyes and remember the sensation of pulling a leather strap through its keeper. The soft creak of aged hide bending to a wrist that has worn it for a decade. That groove carved into the leather, worn smooth by years of the same hand. That is a signature no logo can counterfeit. The friction of the buckle against the first link, the faint click as the crown seats home. These are the tactile truths the advertisement never mentions. The catalogs omit the movement entirely. Beneath that dial, beneath the crown you just twisted, a balance wheel is oscillating 8 beats per second, and that heartbeat is the actual story. Here is where the escalation begins. We move from the public's affection to the documented choices of billionaires, and the paradox deepens into something almost uncomfortable. Elon Musk wears Omega. Jeff Bezos wears Omega. The South China Morning Post's 2023 report names both men as Omega wearers, placing the brand squarely among the tech elite. Yet, YouGov's 2026 ratings place Omega at number 16 in American popularity, holding just 30% approval. The least popular brand on this entire list by general affection is the one strapped to the wrists of the men who build rockets and rewrite commerce. The irony is almost architectural. The brand with the lowest public approval among our 5 is the one chosen by the most visible innovators of the age. Space, apparently, prefers a different signature than the mall. The psychology here is not random. A peer-reviewed study in the Journal of Consumer Research found that visible status signals can affect how others perceive a person's social standing. Another, published in Psychological Science, demonstrated that luxury consumption can function as a signal of wealth and status in social contexts. The studies confirm what the industry already knows. The objects we wear broadcast a message that others decode automatically. But here is the twist: the studies do not advertise. The most secure status never needs to shout. When your name is attached to electric cars and reusable rockets, the logo on your wrist becomes irrelevant. The signal is already carried in everything else you have done. The watch, for such men, stops being a billboard and becomes a tool or a quiet companion. Remember the number 16? Remember that 30%. The catalog would have you believe that low popularity means insignificance. But Omega's story inverts that logic completely. The brand with the least general appeal sits on the wrists of men who have literally left the planet. And the scent of that contradiction, the faint oil of a freshly serviced caliber, the warm leather of a strap broken in by a hand that has signed contracts worth billions, lingers in the air of every boardroom where these decisions are made. At least, that is what the marketing would have you believe. But marketing rarely mentions the movement. That is where this story actually begins. Look at the watch on your wrist right now. What did you actually buy it for? The name on the dial, or what the dial cannot tell you? The honest answer, for most of us, is the name. And that honesty is exactly what the industry depends on. The studies stack like evidence in a quiet courtroom. The Journal of Consumer Psychology reports that consumers use products as identity signals, communicating social meaning to others through the objects they choose. Frontiers in Psychology adds that conspicuous consumption is associated with status-seeking motives. Every journal, every peer-reviewed finding lands on the same conclusion. We wear our identity on our skin, and the watch is the most intimate billboard we own. These studies prove the visible world works. The status signal is real, and it functions exactly as designed. But they also reveal the inversion at the heart of this story. If the watch is merely a signal, then the signal's value depends entirely on the credibility of the wearer. A Casio on the wrist of Bill Gates carries more authority than a Patek Philippe on the wrist of a man who borrowed it. Patek Philippe's famous line. You never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation, is usually read as an advertisement, but the millionaires on this list live it in reverse. Their Casio needs no looking after because it was never a possession in the traditional sense. It is a tool of a life that owns its time rather than being owned by it. The collector who sees only the dial buys the wrong watch for the rest of his life. The collector who reads the movement, who understands what the case conceals, what the patina records, what the mechanism carries, buys one watch that lasts 2 centuries. But even that collector, if he's honest, will admit the dial still whispers to him. The visible signal never fully releases its grip. That is the paradox resolved. The visible world is real. It works. It shapes perception. But the most secure status does not need to announce itself. And that quiet confidence is precisely what the 5th brand embodies. The 5th name was never meant for a display case. It was never meant to be photographed under museum lighting or whispered about in auction rooms. It was designed to be worn, used, dropped, replaced, and worn again. And that is exactly why it wins. YouGov's 2026 ratings deliver the verdict without drama. Timex ranks number 1 in America. Not Rolex, Timex. The brand that your father wore, that your grandfather wore, that has been ticking through American history since before the Second World War, outranks the crown in the court of public affection. The most sought-after watch brand in the United States is the one the luxury industry would never put in a glass case. And the surprise deepens. Casio holds number 4 with 43% approval. A near-perfect echo of the billionaires' actual choices. The South China Morning Post's 2023 report confirms what the numbers imply. Bill Gates goes for Casio. The richest documented watch wearer on Earth, the man who built Microsoft from a garage, chooses a resin case with digital digits over a hand-finished mechanical caliber. The inversion completes itself. The visible logic of luxury, the louder the logo, the higher the status, collapses when you cross-reference what America truly admires with what documented millionaires actually wear. The most loved watch in the nation costs less than a tank of gas. The most documented billionaire wears a brand that retails for pocket change. The two data sets, public affection and private choice, converge on the same quiet truth. The dial hunter buys the crown. The movement reader buys the tool. And the tool, worn for decades, becomes the most honest companion a wrist can carry. When your watch passes to the next pair of hands, what will it say about you? That question lingers in the air long after the numbers fade. The Patek Philippe motto. You never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation. Frames inheritance as a privilege. But the millionaires on this list flip the equation. Their Casio carries no heirloom weight, no obligation to preserve. It carries something rarer, the freedom of a man who has nothing left to prove. Timex beats Rolex in American affection. Casio sits at number 4. Omega rides the wrists of space-bound billionaires. Cartier claims the Silicon Valley boardrooms. And Rolex, the crown, the king, holds number 2. Still magnificent, still coveted, but no longer the most loved. The 5 names, delivered in full, rewrite the story we tell ourselves about wealth and the wrist. The final image is the Casio display flipping to midnight, silent and precise, on the wrist of the world's most documented billionaire. No sweeping second hand, no tremulous heartbeat of a mechanical caliber, just the quiet assurance of a life that measures time instead of displaying status. And what that quiet watch answers in the dark, that is a story we will open in the next chapter when we look inside the quartz revolution and the mechanical counter-revolution it ignited.